like last year. Well, I guess the last 2 years we got drawn for Kansas. But I think it was the year your video came out or something, or we didn't get drawn. Like, way to go, Chris, asshole. You know, and it just joking, right? But
but seriously.
Yeah, seriously though. But it
was a 30% increase, 30% tag increase.
All because of Chris B's video.
I gotta tell you, man. Dude,
it could have been. It could have been. Yeah.
They're definitely. The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Deer Grow.
Man, it's almost food plot season, Jared, and Deer Grow is one of those products that has really changed the way that we plant food plots and the success we've seen from them.
No doubt. I've been, trying to plant food plots my entire whitetail hunting career, which is a little shorter than yours. But the minute that I started, or that I realized that I could get Deer Grow back into some of these remote plots where I couldn't get lime or fertilizer, especially in the 50-pound bag, format. So everything was changed. I could get into these spots moving forward with a backpack sprayer, and that's since escalated to these 40 or 60 gallon sprayers, and we're doing upwards of 5 to 10 acre food plots just with Deer Grow and having phenomenal success.
Yeah, and I mean, with the price of fertilizer, lime, diesel, everything this year, I mean, what better way to get in there and grow a successful food plot at about a third of the cost? Check out Deer Grow at deergrow.com. And we're back.
Hey,
episode. Oh, geez. See, I'm already off. HUNTR Podcast episode with her. So Jared and I've been shooting commercials all day.
Trying to remember a format. I'm like, this is why we don't prepare for stuff. Yeah. So, but anyways, as always, remember to follow, subscribe, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you like to listen.
Simple as that. It is July 6th. Happy post 4th of July.
Yeah. Let me catch up with,
For anyone listening in England, hope you had a great work day.
Suckers.
Yeah, world champs.
We win.
And it's July 6th. It's crazy, man, to think about it. So there's a lot happened in the last week.
Well, we've been road tripping.
That's probably why my brain's still dragging a little bit. We've been to
a little bit of stress still prolonging from that.
Yeah, we've been to Illinois twice in the last week.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
2 trips.
We had to get permission for the first one. The second one was from the wives anyways, was please, we have to.
We have to go back. So 2 out and back driving trips in the last week to Illinois, looking at farms.
Hopefully they turn out to be worth it. We're working hard on it.
Yeah. So cool to be out. I mean, hot, humid, but starting to feel like when we got into some of those farms, starting to visualize the buckiness around them. And so for a couple of Western Pennsylvania guys, that was a great escape to get out there.
Well, dude, we every time we go out, it seems like we really embrace the, as great as it would be to live where the deer are. Man, would that be way more convenient? It's like every time we want to go out and get into one of those environments, it's just 9-10 hours, for us to drive out there. But when that does happen, I think we fully embrace that, man, we don't get to be here very often. And so we just soak it all in while we're there. We're just out there binging.
Yeah. Even on the drive, admittedly, I think we both listen to our podcast over again on occasion when we have time.
Yeah.
But the first trip out there, which was 7.5 or 8 hours, we didn't have the radio on once going out or back. We should have filmed 3 podcasts on the way there and back.
We were just full on for it, man.
Yeah, just full on talking, excited to get there, after seeing things, thinking Midwest and hunting season coming. And the last one was more, it was good, but it was also a drag. By the time we were getting back,
it felt longer coming back.
Struggle bussing.
Yeah. Well, we lose an hour coming back from Central Time Zone to Eastern Time Zone. Going out there, you buy one back. It's we're early.
Yeah, hey.
Coming back, it's you add 2 hours to the trip.
So, but that's kind of been, and with that, it's exciting, but it's also kind of, start to push us a little bit here on things that we have to do. We've got beans in the ground. We've gotten a lot of rain, which is great. At the same time, I think it's causing a lot of weed growth in some of these plots. So we're due to spray here bean plots like soon.
Yeah, and I'll take the rain. Yeah, I'm spraying tomorrow. Spraying beans.
Yep.
Starting to spray some fall plots, like some ones that we're working for the first time.
Yep.
And hopefully we've got some bows coming.
Yes.
I don't know. I kind of figured they'd be here maybe next week. So we'll kind of work on getting those all set up, and I'm excited for that too. Kind of start to get in the mindset.
Our guest today is kind of a bow guy.
Kind of,
you might say a bow guy. Also a guy who, and we'll get into it, I think has moved to where he's at for deer.
Yep.
Coincidentally.
Yep. So when people, to us, say quit whining and just move to Iowa if you want it so bad, this guy did it.
Yeah, Chris B did it.
He did it.
He went. So we've got a lot to talk about with Chris today. Probably just shooting the shit on some stuff and. Be interesting. We were talking kind of pre-podcast. He basically at one of the Total Archery challenges, he won a truck. Is that what he won?
I think so. He can correct us if not. But yeah, apparently it was here in Pennsylvania, which I told him I was there briefly and I had to run off for an emergency. I had to take care of some family.
Can't even
stuff,
fiend a truck in today's market, let alone win one.
I know.
Jeez.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if he has it or they're like, well, we'll ship it to you in 8 months.
Yeah, that's it. Just shows up.
It's not the first one either. I'm curious if he keeps those or just turns around and sells them. Or
that's not the first truck he's won?
I don't think so.
Wow, yeah, we're gonna have to get into that.
You could probably make a living off of just winning those trucks.
Yeah, maybe he is. Winning trucks and killing bucks.
Think about it. You win 2 or 3 a year, depending on whatever truck they're giving away. I mean, it's $100,000.
That's pretty awesome. Well, let's bring Chris in.
All right.
Well, Chris, we appreciate you coming on this afternoon, man. You got to kind of correct Jared and I right out of the gate. So did you just win a truck?
No, so that was a little bit of quote unquote clickbaity.
Oh,
you bitch.
I got you guys though. No,
we
got entered in.
I literally told Jeremy that's why I was like, dude, did you know Chris just won that truck? I was like, that's crazy. You son of a bitch.
So we got entered to win the truck. So it's so you hit this. It's 111 yards, and you have to hit the center ring, which is I think 4 inches in diameter, and you have to hit it. You have to hit it without touching any lines. But once you hit it, you just get entered to win. So right now there's probably 60 or 70 people in for the year.
Wow,
that's
so it's more than
every Total Archery challenge.
Damn.
Yeah, so I mean, I think last year it got up to 100 people. I think every year is a little bit different. Last year is definitely the biggest year.
Wow.
I think it depends on demand and how well the weather is at some events and stuff.
Yeah. So
they go by event and it just keeps accumulating until this year Utah Attack is the very last one. So they'll keep doing it every single event, and then at the very last one they'll draw it out of a hat pretty much and choose a winner.
Makes sense that they do it that way, but man, wouldn't you love to see a shoot off? Shoot off. It's everybody that can hit that.
Yeah.
First of all, 60, 70 people, that's a lot. They should probably back it up to 150. Narrow that down to a
handful.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they've talked about that because the first few years there was 15, 20, 30 people, and now it's 100 people.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little money maker for them. I mean, people are dropping some money. It's $15 a shot.
Oh man.
So
that's a money maker right there.
So you're telling me there's a chance.
Are you there egging people on the guy that's sitting on the dunk take? You're come on.
Come on.
It's 15 more bucks.
One more shot.
Yeah.
You won't do it.
Serious, but kind of
sorry,
go ahead, Chris.
No, you're good. We have some fun with it. Just it's been in videos. So people are when we go to shoot it, we're try to get more guys to throw money at it or whatever.
Yeah. Here's a serious, but I guess kind of playful question. You go to a lot of TAC events, right? I'm sure more than Jeremy and I do. You ever see anybody there with a crossbow?
I have. I think just once though, and it was more of the traditional recurve. It was an old one, but it was a recurve one.
Old school Excalibur type thing.
I think it. Yeah, it looked really old, but it's definitely frowned upon, I feel.
Is it?
A crossbow.
I wonder why though. If I had a crossbow, I would want to go to that.
I don't know. feel like you get your ass kicked there.
It's a fun. I mean, we could dive down this rabbit hole if you want to.
Oh, we always like
the
to.
rabbit hole.
Yeah. So one guy. I mean, and bold move.
Good for him, dude.
Yeah,
Good for him.
He didn't care. Going against the grain.
Well, frankly, I'd like to see more out there. I mean, it just I mean, and I hate that it does, but it just speaks to like the lack of practice that it needs. But dude, you should be out there shooting a 3D course.
Yeah. I don't know.
Too early.
Too early to bring into the crossbow thing. No, it's never too early. No, it's never too early.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's interesting though. I would expect it there to be more than one guy.
Yeah.
So see a lot of recurve people there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen. Yeah, you see some longbow, like some recurve people, but you really don't. You don't see a lot of crossbows, and I think it's because Total Archery Challenge has been so branded around like vertical bows. Like when you think of archery, you don't think of crossbows. Like when just the word pops up in your head, you just think vertical bow. Like even traditional long bow, compound bows. You really don't think of crossbows. So I don't know. I feel like I think they'll let people. I don't think they have any rules against it. Obviously, there's been like one guy that I've seen, but it's very much a traditional thing. I definitely know all the novelty stuff, like the novelty shoots, like shooting for the truck. They would not let a crossbow.
Yeah, I was gonna say that one. But there is. I think we talked about it maybe a couple weeks ago. The ASA trail, so the actual competitive archery trail, they shoot crossbows in that.
Yeah.
Different class, but it's like,
for sure.
Yeah,
I would hope so.
That it's a different class.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like that's like a guy competing in women's swimming.
No, they have a completely different class, and they pay out money pretty decently.
Huh.
So the ASAs, even some indoor archery stuff, like the Vegas shoot, that giant shoot, indoor tournament in Vegas. There's a pretty big crossbow class.
Wow.
And it's wild. Like you can shoot some wild good scores. And they even have like the rifle stance where they like lean back and do the whole deal and everything. Yeah, people get way into it. Mission Crossbows actually did a pretty good push for like ASAs and tournaments. Like they had like sponsored shooters and stuff. Like it was definitely a deal.
Wow.
Yeah. Is it a further shot? They back you up?
Not for indoors. It's still 20 yards. So it's 20 yards for crossbows and compound and recurve and everything like that.
Yeah.
For outdoor, like 3D stuff, I think it's at 50 yards, which is the furthest that like the professional division shoot at.
Gotcha.
So.
Well, Chris, speaking on the archery stuff, like, forgive Jeremy and I, we're not totally up to speed on like the whole archery world. Like you're certainly plugged in on the competition side and stuff. I think a lot more than we are. Can you share with us just like some of your credentials, your experience, like getting into the archery world, and even share with us like, the background on your YouTube channel and kind of just give an introduction of yourself?
So I grew up in Michigan. My dad was a big time bow hunter, and he got me into archery at a very young age. I think I was 6 or 7 years old. He gave me one of those really small red fiberglass bows with the arrows. And when I was shooting at like 3D targets in the backyard, like they weren't even sticking in the target. They were just like bouncing out of it. So that was the age I started at. And when I was, I think 8 years old, it was 7 or 8 years old, I got into like a youth archery program at Livingston Conservation Sports Association in Brighton, Michigan. And it was, there was 50, 60 kids every Saturday morning shooting like this indoor league. And that's really where my exposure began, like figuring out like, hey, this archery thing could be cool, and got pretty hooked. And on my 8th birthday, I got my first bow, like compound bow, as a PSE Spider. And then from there, I just I started bow hunting when I was 10, because you had to be 10 years old in Michigan in order to hunt. I think that age requirement's gone now, but you had to be 10. And I shot a buck in October with my dad out of a ground blind. And that was the very first deer that I've ever killed. And then right at that time, I also shot like my first state tournament. So it was like this little state tournament thing, and kind of got hooked on that. So from there, ever since I was 10 years old, I've killed a deer with a bow every single year. So for 16 years now, I've killed a deer, at least one deer with the bow.
Wow.
Every year. Yeah, it's been cool, man. Especially growing up in Michigan. I mean, we had so many deer. There's lots of targets. They weren't big, but we had a lot of deer at least.
Mm-hmm.
And then so from there, I was kind of got more involved in the tournament side of things, and started going to more and more state tournaments. I upgraded my bow to like a better hunting bow, and I was still shooting tournaments with my hunting bow. And then we got exposed to like, hey, you could actually go to a national tournament. Like all you got to do is sign up and go there. I think it was in Pennsylvania. So we all drove out there, and I still had a hunting bow, but I like rigged it out with all the target stuff. So like long stabilizers and scope and everything. And I think I came in third, or I placed, I forget what it was. I mean, it was like the youngest division you could be in the youth divisions. So that got me hooked like big time. So I'm like, okay, this is fun. Like I got to do more of this. So from there, I mean, it just scaled. I would do more state stuff, more national stuff. And when I was 14 or 15, I believe I was 14, I went to California for like my first exposure to any sort of like world tournament stuff. It was a world team trials. So I shot up a division. So I wasn't even in my age bracket. And I made it to like the final day shoot offs, and was competing against like 17-year-olds, and made it as the alternate. So I wasn't on the team, but I like made the 4th spot. So I thought that was super cool at the time. And I was like, dang, man, like this is sweet. Like I think the trip was Poland. Like I almost made it on a team to go to Poland. So that was sweet. So kept doing stuff like that. And I mean, throughout my high school years, I made it on the United States archery team like 4 years in a row, I think, which is like your top people in the nation when you do like this circuit. It's essentially like a PGA tour, but for USA archery type stuff. So I did that all the way through high school. In high school, I then picked up NASP, which is a National Archery in the Schools program.
Yep.
I did not start there, but I eventually picked it up. And that, man, I mean, that got me all sorts of exposure. So I obviously knew how to shoot a bow already. And when I picked that up, I did pretty decent. I made, I placed at like national several times, world several times, made it on some all-star teams. We went to South Africa on an all-star team, did a couple all-star teams here. So honestly, NASP, I did probably my best in out of the 2 disciplines at that time. Really, and honestly, it was harder because when you went to nationals, there was 15,000 kids there.
Jeez.
So it was like an insane amount of kids. So that was fun doing that. And I still to this day, it's like if your school has a program, like a NASP program, you definitely got to do it. I mean, even if you just bow hunt, like there's so much exposure to archery and the sport that you can get in. So after high school, I guess during that time when I was 16, I made my YouTube channel. So I started filming my hunts and doing fun videos, and just kind of because I enjoyed it. I liked filming. I started to learn how to edit myself, film, and was very self-taught. And from when I was 16, just until like this past year, pretty much every single deer I've killed with the bow has been on film.
Wow.
So I like made a very conscious effort ever since I was 16 to like solo film everything. And so it's been a long grind, and it started way back in high school. So from there I went to Michigan State, and I actually shot on like the Michigan State archery team. That was also super, super fun. We traveled all around. Actually made like a world team for the World University Games and went to Taipei, which was super cool. It was wild. It was like a little mini Olympics for college. It was probably the craziest event I've ever gone. They literally built apartments in the city we were in, put a giant cage around it. It was like Hunger Games. You had these little key cards to like scan in and out. Like it was a wild experience.
Jeez.
And then from there in college, I switched over to like the professional division. So I started shooting professionally. never really had like a win or anything professionally because it's just freaking hard.
Yeah.
Like you have to practice so much, and like that's all the winning guys right now. It's like that's what they do. So I did well. I'm super happy with it, and especially now I've toned it down to where I'll shoot just a couple events here and there. But yeah, I guess that's kind of like my archery career saga leading up to this point.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Chris, like obviously you got into like the archery and shooting stuff at a young age. Would you say though, even that was driven by the fact that, you know, watching your dad be like, you know, a successful bow hunter, that you wanted to be a bow hunter, and it's just kind of naturally you found another thing to do with a bow?
Yeah, I mean, my dad, he was like your traditional Michigan bow hunter guy. Like had 10 acres out back, had a couple tree stands, and shoot a few deer a year and be like super happy.
Yep.
So that's what got me into it. But I just love shooting archery in general. So I just whatever little avenue I could go down, I just went down it.
Dude, so what frankly, Jeremy and I are kind of oblivious. Like we spend so much time focusing on you know, even within the bow hunting world, like our focus is probably, if I had to choose, like if it was the archery focus or if it was like the land management focus, like we probably spend more time like on the land portion of it, like putting, you know, work into different farms that we're hunting, or even, you know, scouting out of state. And we do some public and stuff like that. We'll get to the Kansas stuff, you know, later, but frankly, and maybe me even more than Jeremy, but like we're kind of oblivious to like the archery world, like all of the, you know, I even have questions about like the governing body of, like you mentioned the ASA, Jeremy. Is that who's like putting together all of these, and like are these guys at the top? What kind of money can you make as like a professional archer?
Yeah, so there's several governing bodies of the sport of archery. It's really weird. It's a lot of politics. Imagine that. But there's USA Archery, which is like the government funded organization. So it's like you shoot USA Archery to travel on these world teams to represent like USA. Like it's not really like considered professional, but it's like you're representing USA when you go to these events. And I mean, they have the USAT circuit is what they call it, United States Archery Team Circuit. So there's an event in California and Florida and Ohio and Alabama and all these spots throughout like the spring through the summer, and you go travel and shoot outdoor tournaments to make these teams and to represent USA. They also have some indoor stuff. Then you have what's called ASA, so Archery Shooters Association. That's like the biggest 3D event. So if you see like Levi Morgan shooting 3D, that's what he's shooting.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what probably most people are familiar with.
They've been growing a lot.
You know, at least listening to this, like the Dan McCarthy's, the Levi Morgans, you know, that you see in that ASA realm.
Correct. Yeah. And that's honestly the closest connection to like hunting and archery is kind of there. And so that's why I think there's a lot of crossover and a lot of popularity with it. 3D animals, you know, stuff like that. It's in Illinois, you know, southern states. It's in heavy hunting states. So that's where I think just most popularity is. I mean, it's on Sportsman's Channel now. So that ASA is definitely where, it's on Sportsman's Channel.
Interesting.
It does it live. Yeah, people don't even know about it. But it does it live every time there's the shoot off.
Nice.
But ASA is definitely where the most money is. The sponsors put the most money into it. I mean, if you win a tournament as a professional, like Levi winning or Dan McCarthy or whatever, I mean, you can walk away with 20, 30 grand in a tournament if you win.
Okay.
The downside of that is if you don't win, you don't make a lot of money.
Right.
Like there's so many guys that are the weekend warriors, you know, they work in the pro shops or they have a day job and they'll travel and do these weekend tournaments, you know, a couple times a year. There's honestly probably like maybe around 10 people that can only shoot full time.
Jeez.
Like that's literally all they do is shoot bow.
Yeah.
So it requires a side gig a lot of times for these like quote unquote professional guys. But it's, you can do really good if you're on top of your game. And then the next year you could not win a tournament, and then you have sponsor deals and everything else. But it's definitely potential to make money, but it's just tricky. It's very pressure oriented. I mean, it's like how you shoot relies on how much money you make. And
so Chris, a lot of those guys, even if they're not finishing, like, let's say on the podiums and then the top, like, you still see them wearing, whether it's their Hoyt or Matthews jersey and I mean, are those lower level guys still getting sponsorships at that point, or is it, how does that work?
Yeah, good question, because I think it creates a misconception that if you're wearing a pro staff jersey, like a Matthews or a Hoyt jersey, that you're making it and you're making a living and you're doing all that. It's like, that's far from, I mean, you are, these companies will give a pro staff jersey out to just about anyone. and people say yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it just is. I mean, it's kind of like a numbers game. A lot of these companies think of it like, can we see like a wave of yellow rolling in?
Right.
Is everyone in Matthew shirts, or is everyone in Hoyt jerseys like there? It's very, very few people are like in that doing well, can do it for a living, actually getting paid. Like, it's very hard. Like, you got to be shooting really good to actually be getting a paycheck, worth anything from companies. You need to be winning pretty much.
Well, yeah, because I mean, you see some of these podium finishes, and again, I'm not saying that it's not nothing, but you'll see somebody holding a check from maybe not the main bow manufacturer, but for like $250, and they won, and it's like, okay, well, like a bunch of those adds up, but like, that's not much money.
You said you can win like $20,000 or $30,000 if you win an event. Like, how many of those events is it feasible for somebody to attend?
So if you do the full circuit, so if you do another organization that's kind of equivalent to ASA is called NFAA, National Field Archery Association. And that's what hosts like Vegas and some indoor tournaments, and the Reading shoot, which is another big 3D tournament. So a lot of times guys will do a little bit of everything. Like, they'll be maybe a 3D guy, but they'll also go to some other events. So if you're one of the main guys that's like really hot that year, I mean, you could win 5 or 6 tournaments and make easily in the 6 figures, just shooting archery, along with sponsor contingencies and all that jazz. But there's also years where you maybe only come in 3rd place at one event, and then you're like top 10 in the rest of the events, like just doing okay. And I mean, if you did that, I mean, you would maybe make 10 grand.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I mean, it
fluctuates a lot.
It kind of seems like any of those, like, I don't know, like pro motocross comes to mind, or even like, bodybuilding and stuff. I don't know. Like, it seems like, there's some money to be made by competing, but like most of it comes from, the side hustle that comes from your notoriety.
Endorsement.
Yeah. Whether sponsorship or like if you can come out with some products of your own, or,
100%.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with archery. I mean, like, if you're winning, you can make money, but you need to be prepared for when you're not winning. Like, it's essentially, like growing into the space and thinking about like, okay, a company sponsors someone because they feel like they will sell them product. It's not because they, are nice. It's not because it's because they can sell product, and you sell product by winning tournaments or having some other source of influence on people.
Yeah.
I mean, it just is like for sponsoring in the archery space. So that's where, I saw, social media being important. And like I ran Hoyt social media while I was in college for 3 years, which really opened my eyes to like how important social media was and everything. But yeah, I mean, that's important, like leveraging shooting very, very well, and also having a good social media and tying those together is like, as a professional archer, is where you got to be. Because if you break a finger tomorrow as a professional archer, I mean, like, what are you going to do?
Yeah. So, Chris, like today, where are you at with all that? Like, how much of your time is dedicated to like shooting professionally versus like you're obviously in other things? I'm sure like your YouTube channel probably makes some money. Like, are you making your money completely in the outdoor industry / archery industry?
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess my business, it's all I do in the outdoor space, archery space, with like YouTube being the main mothership, I guess, or the driving force of it all. But yeah, on a like archery professional level, I love going to events. I'll still go to an event, but the amount of bandwidth I would have to put forth practicing and preparing for them is way too much than I can afford now.
Yeah.
Like it's shooting every day for, X amount of arrows to get my endurance up, and then keeping on it, like shooting every couple days. I just can't. Like I haven't picked up my target bow in 2 months just because I'm so busy doing everything else, because everything else is just taking off, and that's how life goes. But
well, dude,
you gotta really, if you're in it, you gotta be in it, sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, dude, that's one thing that I really appreciate about you is that I think a lot of people are like, know you for your archery knowledge and like the tips and tricks that you give to people. And, but at the same time, it's like from a bow hunting perspective, when I jump on your YouTube channel or I see stuff you're putting out on social, I'm like, this freaking dude likes to hunt. I like recently here is relating up to this podcast. I watched a bunch of your hunts from Iowa and stuff this past couple of years, and probably your Kansas video. It is, one of the most notable. People, people that aren't plugged into the archery community are like, oh, is that kid that killed that freaking giant on, Kansas walk? And we're like, yes. That's him.
Yeah, no, I love hunting. I mean, I started hunting, and that's where I think the misconception is like I'm, more archery focused, which I am. Like archery is my main focus, but I got into archery because of hunting, so I'm bow hunter through and through. I mean, I think I hunted like over 100 days last year.
Wow.
Like it was just nonstop.
That's crazy, man. Well, so yeah, because I mean, you're traveling, right? So you were in Michigan. When did you move to Iowa? Just like a year or two ago?
So yeah, we're coming up on 3 years.
Okay. And so you moved to Iowa for obvious reasons.
Is that what prompted the move? Did you move to Iowa to kill giant bucks?
Yeah, so it was a multitude of reasons. So my girlfriend, Caitlin Moss, she has like a YouTube channel and everything too. We started dating and we were long distance for a year, and it's like relationship escalating, whatever. It's like, okay, like we need to find a meet in the middle spot, because we're not doing this long distance thing. She's like, well, I'm not moving to Michigan. And I was like, if I'm moving, I'm going to move to Iowa. So Iowa's our meet in the middle.
That's a good ultimatum.
Along with it. Yeah. Good politics here, good business here, and big deer. So it's like, it's kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Because she was living in what, Missouri at the time?
Yeah, she was in Kansas City, which Kansas City's great, but it's like, if I'm going to move to Iowa. Like, it's just, sorry.
Yeah.
I'd be the same way probably.
I think that's the
way to put it. If I'm going to move, I'm moving to Iowa.
Yeah. So you moved to Iowa. Yeah. I mean, is you're on 3 years now. I mean, is it everything you expected?
Gosh, dude, I think there's a lot of misconceptions about Iowa. And, I'll say this too. I was just on a podcast a little bit ago and they were asking me the same sort of questions. And I feel like there's a trend right now of people bebopping around and moving all around and like exposing states to social media and whatnot. Like that really opened my eyes after Kansas. Yeah. Like I will forever think differently about the impact that having a big channel is on states and areas. So moving to Iowa, it's like, you want, as an outsider, you want to come here to take advantage of the resources in the state. Everyone in the state doesn't like guys like me coming in to take advantage of the state's resources.
Right.
So it's like, there's such a double-edged sword internally in me that's like, sometimes it doesn't sit well. And I cause I understand and I see both perspectives. But it's definitely been a transition. It's definitely been hard. And honestly, Iowa hunting is great, but it's still hunting and it's still hard.
Yeah.
Like sure, if you have some giant, well manicured property or good neighbors, like you can have good deer year after year. But I mean, last year I finally got like some good properties and some like what I thought was like a good program. And man, it was still hard to find 160-inch deer.
Yeah.
It like really, every year I've learned a good bit. Like first season, it was just like it was just like drinking out of a fire hose, like what's going on here. And then like last year got a little bit more dialed. It's like, okay, let's be less picky, just enjoy hunting here and like figure it out. And this year it's like just trying to dial it in more and more of the spots and everything like that. So
is that,
it's not like a Booner's behind every tree here.
Yeah. Is that primarily like permission that you're getting, or do you have leases or public or?
Yeah, I have a couple leases now, in a couple permission places. So, I think, diversity, a big thing that I'm like trying to work on is diversity of spots. Just to, sometimes the property will have a down year and then the other one will be better, and just, more spots are better, even if they're small. I think you just never know when like a big deer is going to be in the area that year, and then you can hunt that one spot.
The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Stealth Cam.
Dude, where would we be without our cell cams?
I would definitely be divorced at this point.
Yeah, I hear that.
I mean, the fact is I spent more time checking cameras than I actually did hunting prior to cell cameras. Now at least my wife can enjoy me being in the comfort of my own home, buried in my phone, checking those pictures.
Yeah, 100%. And dude, when it comes to trail cameras and definitely cell cameras, reliability is, I think, the number one thing that we're looking for. Stealth Cam just has a long reputation of reliable cameras, and ultimately that is the most important thing to us. They have to work.
In terms of reliability, there's not a better camera on the market than Stealth Cam, whether you're talking about the Fusion X, the Reactor, or the DS4K Transmit. And most of them are under $200.
Stealthcam.com. Check them out.
So, Chris, when you talked about like that, the impacts of kind of the social side, obviously we know how successful your Kansas video went, which, I guess,
dude, what a freaking hunt. Like, I'll go back and rewatch it every once. I'm just like, holy crap, man.
It's nuts.
How cool was it? Whatever, the mixed emotion of like, it exposed all this stuff. But like, dude, even just to be able to see that was like, I don't know that
that's what people dream of.
I know there's another video that stands out of that deer coming over the hill like that one does in my mind.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. I mean, people ask, and it's like, did you have intel? Did you have trail cameras out or whatever? And it's like, the story is what exactly happened. I mean, I e-scout. Well, first I picked some random units that I've never stepped foot on applying for, because I was like, I've never hunted Kansas before.
Yep.
Let's try it. And did some e-scouting and probably had like a dozen pins on a couple decent spots. And first morning, I just saw a buck on one of them that I had pinned, went and sat in a tree, and honestly, no intel whatsoever. And he just walked by, which is absolutely wild. Like, that'll never happen again in my entire life. Yeah. And what's wild is we went back to the same area this past year and had the absolute worst week of hunting I've ever had in my entire life. Yeah. It was terrible.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know if it's the increase of pressure or if it's like that. I mean, I know that was 100% of a fluke, because Caitlin was hunting. She hunted 4 days after that, and she saw like 2 bucks in those 4 days. Mm-hmm. Like, it was such a random fluke of a thing. So
it's funny how it happens like that, though, man. I mean, we've had that same experience in Kansas. I think a couple of years I've killed on like the first morning, and then the next 6 days where they're hunting, it's just desolate, and a lot of time I think the weather's huge out there. I mean, it gets hot in a hurry in some cases, and we see that affect the deer movement. But
it's situational too, like from property to property. It's weird because for a long time it was just Jeremy and I, and we had some other guys going with us. But more recently we've taken our dads out, so we have more people on looking at when we're all on different properties and stuff. And it's like one property might just be dead, and I don't know if it's like and it's weird. It's from year to year they change too. It's like, well, I don't know, dude. This bottom was on fire last year. It's like now I can't buy a buck. Mm-hmm. And some spots are just, they're on, and it's like it doesn't matter how much pressure you apply to them. Like last year, Dad was in the spot. My dad was in the spot. Like from day one, he was just like buck after buck after buck, and he had some opportunities, and I got an arrow in 2 of them. But by the end of the trip, we're like, dude, what are we doing? Like, we need to put somebody else in that. It's not. we think about like, well, you don't want to overpressure a woodlot or whatever.
We
It's
put
like,
one guy on 140 acres because it's the way that it funneled. It was like, well, every deer could come past him. And it did. Like every deer did come past him, basically.
And then we continued to see giants. Like it was one of the last days of hunt. I walked in there and I was like, I bumped a booner for sure out of a drainage. It was right next to him. And he's like, I never saw it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think last year was the first time, Chris, and I mean, we've hunted, Jared and I usually are on public, especially with the dads out there, but last year was the first year that it seemed like we couldn't get away from people on public. Like before, it would be like, somebody's at that spot, we'll bounce over here. Mm-hmm. Last year was the first year it was like every freaking parking lot was jammed. And what was surprising is most of the people on it were Kansas residents. Yeah. It wasn't non-residents we were running into. We were running into Kansas residents everywhere.
Yeah. I think that's becoming more and more popular in each state. Is like the fad of public land hunting is so big that even if you have like a permission piece or like your own property, people just want to go hunt public, which is just sometimes absurd to me, but they just want it for the challenge or want it for the, change of scenery. But I don't know. I noticed that too. In every state that I go to, it's like a lot of residents hunting their own public, which is cool. But
I don't think it's by choice, honestly. I mean, maybe, there definitely is like that public land fad, but I think they're getting displaced by people coming in or leasing or buying, non-residents coming in and leasing or buying, which, you said you went out and bought a piece. Like who can blame a guy for buying a piece of land to that's what you do. But the reality is I think a lot of those guys that we're seeing on public now maybe used to just have permission on their neighbors or wherever. And, that permission dried up, within the last couple of years here.
It could get real dicey here soon. Kansas has got this baiting ban bill on the table. Like, I don't know where it stands in status. Like, it's just recent that it's even come across the desk, right? So think about if on private land, because you can't do it on public, but on private land, baiting is banned. I mean, man, now food resources become critical. And frankly, there's some better managed public land than there is this cattle barren land on a private side. Now, it used to be if you had cattle ground, you put a corn pile out, you'll draw a buck in. But I mean, if that goes away, you may be better hunting public land than you are that 160 acres of cattle ground.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's wild. I think it's just an evolutionary thing. Like more and more people are getting into hunting. There's more and more people in general, and it's just like, there's only so much property to go around. I think about it often. It's like, what is hunting going to look like in 20 years, 30 years, 40 years? Like, is there going to be, now a bunch of 40-acre lots all scattered across Iowa and Kansas, because so many people have moved in? And is it going to become Michigan? Because essentially what Michigan is a bunch of 10, 20, 30 acre lots. I mean, it's hard to find 100 acres of continual land in Michigan, especially Southern Michigan. Mm-hmm. And it's just because of a population thing. More and more people are coming in and buying and splitting up family farms. And
that's it.
I mean, that's what's going on here. I mean, land prices are going way up. Because people keep expanding out of these metro areas, and eventually all of these more rural areas are just going to keep getting busted up.
Yep.
So it's like, it's just a snowball effect. I mean, like talking to guys that were buying property out here in Iowa 10, 20 years ago for $500 an acre, $1,000 an acre. I mean, they were the start.
Yeah.
I mean, they were the start of it though. I mean, they were buying these giant chunks. I mean, these 1,000-acre pieces, they were busting up into, quarters.
Yep.
And then selling it for $1,000 an acre.
Yep.
And now those guys are splitting their pieces in a quarter for $6,000 an acre. And then we're going to come around and buy those 100 acres and split it into quarters and sell it for $10,000 an acre.
Yeah, dude.
I mean, it's just not going to stop. The evolution, it's like that, it's the economies of scale and that democracy. I mean, it's just like the fact that you can go buy land, sell the land, and like, it's never going to stop,
Yeah, people ask us that all the time. They're like, well, we're going to wait till land prices come back down, or we're just, we'll wait. And it's like, it's not going to get any better. Down. No, it's going to just keep going. I mean, it's a supply and demand thing. That's just how it's going to be. And with that population, and we had a conversation, well, if people are listening to this, I guess it's the last podcast, Chris, with Matt Ranella, so Steve Ranella's buddy and brother. And Matt is very vocal on this whole, like,
It was a rough
there's
one.
too many hunters. Yeah, and I mean there were some things that we absolutely didn't agree with Matt on, but he makes a good point in some of the resource thing where it's like, you know, there's groups that are absolutely trying to promote and continue to grow the number of hunters, but it's like, dude, where are we going to put these people?
He basically was speaking to, like, you know, like the military industrial complex, like, of the hunting industry. It's like he basically is pointing fingers at hunting influencers and manufacturers for, like, over promoting and pumping money into creating new hunters, even though it's extremely limiting, you know, access for everybody, like, at the bottom. And he's like obviously he's against that.
Yeah, the extreme.
Mm-hmm. It's a double-edged sword, man. I mean, I think it's just business in general.
Sure.
You know, it's not even a hunting thing when you just think about business, and there's supply and demand, and when the demand is higher than the supply, you're going to run into issues, and we're running into the supply being different looking. I don't think it's an issue. It's just going to be different. You know, the land's going to be different, our resources are going to be different. But yeah, I mean, that's where I was kind of talking about, like, exposing, you know, states and the resources and promoting it. It's like, yeah, I feel like a double-edged sword at times, because, you know, you go into an area and show it off, and you're like, yeah, Kansas has giant deer, come hunt there.
Yeah.
And then 30% increase in tag sales the next year, and a bunch of non-resident guys go lease a bunch of land that maybe this resident 16-year-old kid had permission on.
Sure.
And that was his only place to hunt. And, you know, you kicked him off. And so, like, okay, I did good by promoting hunting, but by doing so, I kicked this 16-year-old kid off of his permission ground.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just like, it's just this weird,
it's a cycle.
This weird, like, double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, because obviously, and we joke, like, every time, like last year, well, I guess the last 2 years we got drawn for Kansas. Mm-hmm. But I think it was the year your video came out or something, or we didn't get drawn. Like, way to go, Chris, asshole. You know, and it just joking, right? But
yeah.
But
seriously.
Yeah, seriously though. But it
was a 30% increase, 30% tag increase.
All because of Chris B's video.
I gotta tell you, man.
It could have been. Yeah.
They're definitely not.
Also, COVID. It was probably COVID.
Probably. We'll blame it on COVID.
Was it 2021?
Yeah. Well, 2020.
What year did you shoot that buck?
19, 20?
I shot it in 2020. So it was 2021 application season is when it went up 30%.
So I guess, yeah, it could have been some of COVID. But, dude, I got to believe that it had some impact. Frank, I can't think of a video.
Well, I mean, the obvious.
I can't think of another one that would have, like, driven people. So I remember specifically people that year being like, freaking crispy, blew up Kansas. And I was like, and while that's obviously not the.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to make you sweat over there.
Yeah.
I mean, no, man. I mean, it's like I had people personally text me kind of jokingly, but be like, way to go, man.
But I mean,
and it's like, okay, what am I supposed to do? What did you not want me to post it?
Right.
Exactly, dude. And again, to our admission on this, we've watched it 5 different times because it's a freaking awesome video. Like, it's what we dream about doing. Yeah, and I mean, but here's where I think
I don't think you did anything wrong.
No, I don't think so either. I think this is where it comes down to there's boundaries that are set in place by, you know, the State Department of Game and Fish, depending on which state you're in, right? And so, you know, Kansas has some pretty tight boundaries. The facts that people like myself, I used to draw every year, and then the year we didn't draw, and it was
then
like,
I started coming.
Yeah, and I was like, what the hell? Like, what do you mean I didn't draw? And it's just because there's other factors, COVID at fact, and I think 2014 or 15 crossbows were introduced.
The demand, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's all these opportunity things that are increasing people to it. And, you know, I think they're protecting it, right? I mean, Kansas is saying, hey, we're still only going to allocate this many non-resident tags, right? Just like Iowa's doing the same thing. Now, behind the scenes, there are lobbyists that are trying to open that thing wide open, right? To allow more people to come in both Iowa and Kansas, which is not a good thing. You know, for a guy who wants to hunt those states every year, I would rather not, just to preserve the resources in them.
Yeah, and I think, to go on your point, it is a state's responsibility to manage a lot of that. Like Nebraska this year went to a draw for mule deer for the first time ever.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, they cut they cut way down. And I mean, I've hunted in Nebraska for many, many years for mule deer, and it's like I didn't draw. Like it's just like it went just like this, which is a good thing. Like I'm okay with it because there's been a significant amount of hunters, more hunters in Nebraska.
Yep.
You can tell trophy quality has gone down, numbers have gone down. So it's like, yeah, okay, sure. Like the land and the deer are more important than my ego and my wants to just go kill more of them.
Yeah.
You know? So South Dakota, same thing. I mean, they went to a draw. South Dakota was like, in my eyes, the first Western state that you could get an over-the-counter mule deer tag.
Yep.
So it's like you had Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan guys would just drive out and make a couple-day trip out of it, and that's getting harder and harder. I mean, going to a smaller and smaller draw. So I think you're right on that.
They did something that was annoying too, though. Like if they're going to cut you out of South Dakota, I'd rather them just say like, "Hey, no tag this year." Instead, they said, "Well, you can have a tag, but you can't hunt until October 1st." It's like, well, what's the point?
Unless you're on private land,
private land,
private.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, which is again regulating, because mule deer in September are dumb, man. I mean,
I know.
They're like, hey, you gotta hunt them. You can hunt them on public, but you're gonna hunt them when it's harder.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I mean, I think that's where you start to look at this. And Jared and I've kind of talked about this on numerous podcasts. For us, it's the experience side of things, right? It doesn't mean that we have to go out there and kill a buck in South Dakota or Kansas or whatever. But we want to have 7 days of where we gave it our all. We had a hell of a time. Sure, you're going to see guys out there, especially if you're hunting public land. But when, example, we whine about it, but last year in Kansas, we spent, half of our hunt driving around trying to find a place that nobody else was hunting. Like, I mean, that's just it. What we weren't even in the stand. We weren't even out there trying to spot and sock or do anything. We were just looking for, hey, there's nobody over here. Maybe that's where we should go. And that takes away from the experience of being out there.
Well, you can react to it however, you want, like, because that is what hunting is, or was at one time, is like, you want to put yourself up against the animal, right?
Yes.
And, I want to figure them out. I want to see what they're doing naturally, and I want to try to like capitalize. I mean, that's the definition of hunting. But as pressure has grown, and especially like on public land, it's become more about like, well, how is that pressure affecting, these animals? And so now my strategy needs to be about adapting to that and hunting accordingly. And some guys, the diehard public land guys some of them have embraced that like wholeheartedly, and they're like, well, that's what hunting is now, is just figuring out where the pressure is. And it's a hard one for me to like accept. Like, I don't want that to be what hunting is. I hate that. I don't want to, it's a totally different thing. And ultimately, we can tolerate it, and that's just part of what it is, especially on public land. But it's kind of a shame to see that, pursuit of the animal and their natural habitat just being kind of abandoned, because it's such a limited resource. So few people can tap into that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's nuts, man. The thing that I think that when we look at these states, and again, it's crazy. So Chris, you kind of mentioned, growing up in Michigan, Jared and I grew up in Pennsylvania. Like, I didn't hear or really see people, like, the furthest I heard people going was like Ohio to hunt when I was growing up. People were like, yeah, we're leaving Pennsylvania. We're going to go hunt Ohio. It's amazing over there. And it's like, oh, cool. But you didn't hear that. Like, nobody drove to Illinois or Kansas or Iowa. Like, it was foreign to that. And going back to kind of the social media side of things, like, this is really opened up the awareness of like, well, you can pick up from Pennsylvania and drive to North Dakota like we do, 26 hours, and hunt mule deer.
I think they did more, not more, but I think people did travel out there. You just didn't hear about it because of social media.
Yeah.
And also, they didn't have the tools like for the DIY stuff. Like, they didn't pull up Onyx. They're like, well, we have to go with so-and-so outfitter. Mm-hmm. So I would assume outfitting was much bigger at the time, before some of these DIY tools existed.
Yeah.
And then again, you just didn't hear about it unless it was on the outfitter's website. There was like a gallery up there.
Yeah, man, I don't know. It's definitely changed the game in a lot of these places to how things are. And so, Chris, you and Caitlin are still traveling around. I mean, even though you guys are in Iowa, you're still traveling around to a lot of different states to hunt during the season, right?
Yeah. I mean, we got I have a full schedule from August through January. I mean, lots of stuff.
And are you starting out west?
I am starting in Alaska, actually. We're doing a Caribou, Alaska trip. Yeah, should be super, super fun. And then August is going to be a burner of a month for me because I go straight from Alaska in August to the end of August. And in September, I have a British Columbia mountain goat hunt. So it's like 2 really, really big hunts back to back. Then I have some elk stuff in September, and then some mule deer in October, and then get into whitetails for October, November, December.
Yeah, and you came to Ohio last year, right?
It's gonna be wild. Yeah, I have a lease in Ohio. Shot a pretty good buck out there last year.
I saw that,
and I have it again this year. Yeah, I have it again this year. So we'll see. What's on there. I'm actually going to make a trip out there here soon, get some cameras out there. But yeah, Ohio's cool. I like it. It's different, man. I mean, especially Southern Ohio, which is the good spot of Ohio, unless you get a little cherry pick spot, but it's very mountainous. It's just different hunting. It's nothing like out here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's funny. I guess we don't really, but Jeremy's got a farm down in Southern Ohio, and I've got a farm in Eastern Central Ohio. And I got to say, I think I would put the central part of the state up against the southern.
Sure. And I think the right farms.
Yeah.
For sure.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I've never hunted Southern Ohio.
Yeah.
I guess we're just going off our.
I think there's big bucks all over the place. I do too, but you deal with more. Yeah. I know, like, here's the bucks, and then they get shot. Mm-hmm. I don't think a lot of my bucks get shot. There's so much area for them to just be.
That's true. Yeah, more vast wilderness. I'm more in farm country.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's the big difference between the two.
Yeah. Where we're at in Ohio, it's like big hills, all timber.
Yep.
Like you're hunting timber bucks. I mean, there's no fields or anything.
Yep.
Weird.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
I'm so uncomfortable.
It's weird.
I'm so uncomfortable in that big woods.
That's my style. I'm uncomfortable in farm ground.
I know.
Because I just want to go, like, and I not have to worry about it. And it's like, well, there's this 10-acre island of woods, and like, don't mess it up.
It's funny as we're like Jeremy and I are looking at Illinois. Like we've been trying to buy a piece out there for a while.
Yeah.
And that's
nice.
That's about as farm country as it gets where we're at. And it's funny because, like, I don't know, dude, you're pretty good at it. Like,
I mean,
we definitely have totally different mindsets going into it. Like, I feel very comfortable with it. I'm like, yeah, they're obviously betting on like this thick ridge here. They're going to walk the top of it and dump down into this. And I can tell, you're looking at it more from a, where you're coming from as a timber standpoint. And I think they both apply.
And it's almost like a side. Well, the first thing I said to you, one of the farms we looked at was like 140 acres. And I was like, where's all the timber? Like, how is this 148? Because it's just open. Mm-hmm. It's like big open ground, and in my mind, I'm like thinking of a 140 acre block of timber that's like, dude, it feels huge. I could walk for a day and like not cover it all. Mm-hmm. There I feel like, it's like this little block, and then where do they go?
Yeah. Where you're at in Iowa, Chris, is it kind of like, when we think Iowa, it's traditional, like lots of coves and small fingers of woods, and that's mainly with the stuff you guys are hunting out there?
Yeah, no, it's your traditional Southern Iowa looking stuff. Lots of ag land, but fingers, and if you get a good chunk of timber, I mean, a lot of deer in it. If you end up with a piece with 50, 60, 70 acres of timber, I mean, that's pretty good. Mm-hmm. If you go more eastern Iowa, there's more timber for sure. But the further west you go, the more desolate it gets. Yeah.
We'll be out there hopefully in February, like January, February. We got our 5th point this year.
Oh, right on.
So we're looking at a hunt next year, and so we've got some ground that we're going to come out and check out. I mean, that'll be our first time ever, to come out this like right after the season ends and kind of just poke around and see what's there, kind of get acclimated.
Yep.
Right on. Yeah. You guys should hit me up when you get out there. We'll connect, maybe do another podcast in person then.
We realized, dude, like the more people we talk to, we're like, oh, everybody's from Iowa. Everybody except
dude.
It's funny. Probably
that's the thing, man. A lot of people are in Iowa. A lot of people for in Kansas, Illinois. I mean, if you're in the industry and you're a whitetail guy, I mean, you get.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like I look at it as you want to. It's just business at that point, and you want to put as much in your favor as possible. So when you look at states like Iowa, Missouri, even Eastern Nebraska, it's like if you get yourself there, one, you're so close to travel around to other states, and then you're also in just good hunting.
Yeah. We definitely suffer from that, man. It's, as much fun as we have driving out to states like Illinois, and we'll be in Kansas this year. It's a poke. I mean, dude, so we're right here by that Total Archery Challenge event in Pennsylvania. We're like half an hour from there.
16 hours to our Kansas spot. 16
hours to Kansas. It's,
8 or 9 to our Illinois area.
Yeah. It's far.
I mean, you build up a lot of anticipation for it, and when you get there, it's like, this is awesome. But I mean, dude, it wears. Oh, well, I mean, you think. Well, about it,
I saw it on your video there. You drove overnight or whatever to Ohio. I mean, it's
a poke.
Every time we go to the Midwest, that's what it is.
I put 50,000 miles on my truck every year.
Yeah,
it's nuts.
Yeah, well, and what we keep talking about, and you mentioned like that August, September timeframe. Like, dude, it's fast too. Like, especially if you're talking about the whitetail side. I mean, it's most cases October 1, and then by the time you get right past Christmas, I mean, it's rough in a lot of places. So I mean, you're trying to cover ground without stretching yourself too thin, and 3 months.
Thank God for Ohio, man. Like that's kind of like our Midwest, I guess, so to speak. Like we spent a lot of time in Ohio, and it's pretty close. So we're southwestern PA, and we don't have to go down this. But the only thing that's keeping it from being as good as like where you guys are at is the baiting thing is really prevalent in Ohio.
Yep.
And with the smaller parcel sizes and the crossbows are prevalent out here, and all that stuff. It's just it does make it tough. I mean, it takes a toll on the deer herd. But if that were to change, there would probably be less of a reason for us to drive to
the smaller
Ohio.
parcel size. I think is Chris brought that up. That Ohio reflects to me, again, besides the baiting in Iowa of smaller parcel size. It's a lot of 40s in Ohio. And it's got great deer country. It's got really good genetics. I mean, it's got potential. I mean, you go in Columbus, you get those deer to
good farm
5
ground.
plus. Yeah, it's 200+ inch deer in Columbus. A lot. It's just you've got 40 acres, and again, because of the baiting thing, you've got guys killing really good deer on 5 acres or less because they can put a corn pile out and steal them from the 100 acres next to them.
Yeah,
and that's it wouldn't happen without that.
What were we saying the other day on the way home? It's a very democratic is not the right word, but a very liberal system in that it seems like it takes from the bigger, maybe even better tracts of land and evenly distributes like the opportunity at deer to all of the smaller ones.
Yes.
It's like, no, that 1,000-acre tract, it doesn't deserve to have all those deer on it. So you level the playing field by allowing all of the surrounding, 5-acre tracts to put that on there. And it definitely distributes the wealth of the resource in that way.
Yes.
Which.
Yeah. For good or bad. I mean, that's the question.
Yeah. That's no different. That's your classic, you're watching a buck all year on your farm, and then the neighbor on the 2 acres kills it.
Yeah.
It's
that's the story of Jared's life.
Your neighbor with the 2 acres didn't grow that deer.
Story of my life.
Basically, every year it's like, all right, Jared, which 4-year-olds do you have that you're not going to kill? Great, they're all dead.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a state like Iowa or Ohio rather could look at a state like Iowa and you guys are obviously doing a lot of stuff right.
Yeah.
So.
The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Hoyt Archery.
Dude, where would we be without our Hoyt bows?
Probably shooting crossbows.
or a Matthews, yeah.
One and the same.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, we love being Hoyt guys because you stand out. When you're in this room full of other people that shoot these other types of bows, I feel like the Hoyt guys just stick out.
Dude, it's just a legit bow. I mean, especially that carbon riser, man. I mean, I know that they've got several other aluminum lines as well. But for me, I'm shooting that RX5 in the carbon model. They've since come out with the RX7. And I can't tell you how much I love being a Hoyt guy amongst a sea full of Matthews guys. So we're out there, I think, proving them wrong, shooting 80 pounds and, killing stuff.
Hey, man, if you want to get serious, get Hoyt. I was surprised. We read this morning, Chris, that the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and then I think it's 23 counties in Minnesota removed their baiting ban, meaning they're allowing baiting again in those areas. Which was, I thought, interesting considering how everybody's tightened down.
They get pounded with just bad weather. I think a lot of that has to do with just to sustain the herd, because people are going to bait. And up there, you get so much snow in northern Minnesota and the UP. A lot of times they hunker down in the wintertime, and you just get die off. There's wolves up there too. I think it's just like anything to help the deer out at this point.
Gotcha.
And baiting helps.
Yeah. So people could start supplemental feeding and things like that without worry of any and during the season, obviously, from an enhancement on the hunting side.
Yeah. That's how, Iowa is. You can do supplemental feeding like you can do it all year round. You can't hunt it off of it. It's literally just a supplemental feeding deal.
Gotcha.
So I think that's good for guys that want to run whatever. I really don't do anything except for like after season late just to get some inventory.
Sure.
But I know like Lukowski's, he's doing all sorts of stuff. He's doing EHD prevention and like he's going all next level on his stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. We just talked to Bomar. Bomar's kind of doing the same thing. He's got some concoction he mixes up.
They feed hard during the off season.
That's expensive too, man. Like super expensive.
It's basically a livestock operation. It's a free range, deer raising machine.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it is. That's what it comes down to. So Chris, with your hunts this fall, do you have a cadence on your YouTube side that you're gearing for a drop like on those hunts? Because it sounds like your schedule's hectic, and then somehow you got to figure out how to edit it as well.
Yeah, we have I have a team now, so we can get back from a trip and give footage to. We have a full-time editor, so he can work on editing and everything, and then between like a field producer and an editor, we can kind of very easily get stuff around and get stuff scheduled out and everything. So yeah, it definitely gets hectic, but in instilling some sort of program, the past, especially last year, we had a really good system down. It really, really helps. You need a process of some sort. We try to do 2 videos a week all year long. that just adds up and it can catch up quick.
Yeah.
It's 104 videos.
So you need something.
Yeah.
Yeah. We mess up sometimes and only get one out and push everything back, but we're just refining the program, trying to get it tighter and tighter. And it's tough, man, to come out with videos that are as relevant and entertaining and quality, and it's it's a giant creativity dump. It's sometimes you hit walls and you just got to mix it up and figure out new things or whatever. So that's why hunting season's really nice, because you just go hunting and you document what happens. In this off season, it's a lot of just creating and trying to figure out what could we make this week for next week or for next month, to keep the channel going. I know a lot of hunting channels that just put these off season months on pause, and they maybe upload once a month. And I don't like doing that route just because we're so archery heavy, and there's a lot of archery stuff we can do right now.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Are you, when you do your hunts, are you trying to release those semi real time, kick it out quick, or is it something you hold to later on?
So unfortunately, working with Matthews, they give me a new bow in August. So I have to hunt with the new bow August, September, October, keep all that footage. And then which is good and not good, because we can edit all of it, line it all up, schedule it all out through January really easily. But then it's we're filming all this stuff in August, September, October that we can't post. So we got to film stuff that we can post without the bow or whatever, pick up the old bow and do that. So it's definitely a process and a learning curve. So yes and no, to answer your question. We spin stuff around fast to keep the channel going, but also have stuff held onto. So
yeah, that's tough, man. I get it from a marketing and manufacturer's angle, but from a content producer angle, you know, especially if let's say you kill, your goat or whatever, when you're in British Columbia, like you want to show that, and then people are like, well, cool, when's the video dropping? Like that's just, and that's the nature of the content machine that we're in today, which is people want it now.
Instantly. Yeah. They do. And I don't know. I think people on the channel are getting a little used to like the big stuff dropping in November, because it's been like 3 years now that we've saved everything and started in November when the bows launch.
Gotcha.
And I'll always try to do like one hunt with like a last year's bow, just to spin around fast and get out on the channel or whatever. But yeah, man, it definitely makes it difficult to wait that long.
Yeah, that's wild.
I don't even know how you would do that. Seems like a very intentional thing. You're like, well,
It's stressful.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, if it's me, right, and it's September, October, I want to watch hunting. I want to see your hunts.
There's got to be a better way.
I don't know. It is funny though, man. Like,
yeah, man. I mean,
think of the archery side, and Chris, you've been in it long enough. Like, you remember when we went to ATA show in January, and like the bows were covered up, like waiting for somebody to like pull down like some curtain to like reveal the bow. Like, it was a big deal. And then now it's just like slowly but surely just creeped up and spread out. Like by the time you get to ATA, like we know you probably already shot the bow.
Yeah, I mean, it's the evolution of the marketing around bows is really, really interesting. The business of the archery space is also very interesting. It's very archaic.
Yeah,
I like to think of it like 5 to 10 years behind normal business, I like to call it, which is like out in the wild.
Yeah,
and I think that has a lot to do with a lot of people that are in charge of companies and running things are just like good old outdoor country boys.
Yep.
And in the real world, it's more just like business people, and it's not necessarily their niche and their hobby, but they're just running businesses. Where I think in the archery world and hunting world, it's their hobby and their baby and their brainchild, and they also are running it. And therefore, I've noticed a lot of people are stubborn and behind on their ways. I mean, there's some people still that are like, I need to get my Instagram up and running, like for their company. And it's like, what do you like? You're 10 years behind. You need to be thinking like all sorts of different stuff. But, but bows specifically, it worked out really well with launching at like ATA show like 15 years ago.
Yeah.
You wait till January 1, this big reveal at ATA show in person, because at the ATA show is where dealers buy all of their inventory. So It was like release and buy. And it's like you had to buy in person because there wasn't such thing as like an efficient way to buy it on the internet. You could call in. So like that whole process was awesome. But lo and behold, this internet thing come around, and telephones and email and all that progressed, and now it's like a dealer can just enter into a dealer portal and order stuff whenever they want. So ATA show is not relevant really anymore on a dealer perspective, because they don't really buy anything at dealer in person anymore. Some people still do. I think definitely the more archaic people do that don't necessarily want to go online, go on websites and like that face-to-face communication, which is great. I think there still is a need for that. But it's changing, and therefore bow companies are switching to earlier and earlier to get marketing out and exposure prior to ATA show, so that when they show up to ATA show, they're ready to buy and they already know. So it's just like this weird, like backwards race. And let's say like this year's, they're going to come out with like all bow manufacturers are going to come out with 2024 bows, but it's still 2023 for 2024. It's just like trucks.
Yep.
They release trucks in the fall, and then they don't get them out until, springtime really to everyone. So it's like that weird lag. And man, it's just a weird thing when you break it down.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of another industry that's changed so much. Like, dude, I think, and I don't love the way that, it seems like we were so backwards for the longest time, to where like up until like 2010, like you could almost say like there was no marketing in the outdoor industry. It just simply was paying people that were on the outdoor channel to like,
That's it.
It was like purely sponsorships. I mean, yeah, there was
magazine ads.
Magazines. There was some other print stuff and like, but it wasn't really until the invention of the internet that these companies had the ability to like create their own content and start to like create their own presence. And like, we still are in a process of pulling away from that. It's like, even now, when I hear people are like, oh yeah, we 30 grand or so, and so they're on the Pursuit channel. I'm like, what?
Yeah,
it's still,
it's not
still
as
around.
common. It's
like,
not as common anymore.
No, it's definitely less and less.
Yeah, but it did exist. Yeah,
I think TV shows. I think TV shows are really responsible for a lot of that lag, because so many TV shows were tied up in these big contracts, and these companies were investing a lot of money into these TV shows as their main marketing focus, and would sign like 5-year deals. But TV really died 2 years into that 5-year deal or whatever it was, and it's like they were just hanging on, and then they would re-sign and do that whole deal. So it really, I think, drug it out longer than other TV sectors. I mean, I don't even know. There's so many personal endorsements. I mean, think about other sports. It's not like they have a TV show and they're making money off the TV show.
No, it's just personal.
They're in sporting networks, and it's personal endorsement.
I think the TV shows in
5 to 10 years behind.
I think the TV show in the outdoor industry was what caused this weird launch and lag on the manufacturing side, because like I would film my shows in the fall, but they didn't air till the next year. So it didn't matter when I released the bow because my marketing wasn't going out to the next year anyways. Well, now, Chris filmed something, he could put it out today. And there it is, right in your face.
Well, who were some of the first guys that were, I mean, Winky comes to mind. It's like, who were some of the first guys that were doing real-time content? Like, I assume they just weren't shooting the new bows. They weren't using the new stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And we were on January.
He was with
like launch
Hoyt.
side.
He was with Hoyt.
Yeah.
So Hoyt historically has not been able to like get early bows, like super early. That's why like Matthews is really the only bow company that can get bows out to guys in the field super early. Just because they have manufacturing they just have all their manufacturing stuff dialed so much. I mean, they do such a great job at that, but they can spin stuff up,
turn them around.
But a lot of these bow manufacturers, it's like they're making the flagship bow until it's just tighter schedules or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so much logistics in the back end to get that all figured out.
I think a lot of Winky's early stuff was still when we were January launch ATA as well.
Yeah.
He might have got a bow in December and held some stuff. I think that's pretty typical of companies. It's like you get stuff in December or whatever.
It may have been Bill as much as it was the company. It just was sitting on a
Very
couch
possible.
in his office.
It was a weight bench in his office. That's what it was. Yeah, with his brown gloves laying on it. Yeah.
It definitely is interesting. I mean, I can tell, Chris, you're really intrigued by like the marketing shift that's happened here in the industry, and it is crazy. Like, do we talk about like what other? Even to go back to motocross, for whatever reason, it's the one that stands out to me. Maybe it's just it's extreme sports type of deal, but like it was so centered around like the endorsement of. But where else was like the content producer buying the spot?
No, nowhere. We were the only industry to do that shit.
That's what was so weird. It's like, well, no, you have to pay me to put it on my platform.
And professional. Yeah. It's like professional archery. I could see being compared to motocross or NASCAR or something. It's like, it's an event. It's a singular event that they're trying to win, and they can get endorsements and sponsors for that.
Yeah.
But hunting, having a TV show, I mean, people only had a TV show because there was no YouTube. There was no way to show the content to the people. I mean, no one's a professional, at hunting. There's no like awards. There's no competition.
What about the Golden Moose Awards?
You just go hunting. Right. Well, that's film related.
Yeah.
That's film related and TV show related, and the producer, and it's not like, well, this person shot a 200-inch deer, and so we're going to sponsor this person, and there's going to be a bidding war and blah, blah, blah. There essentially is, but it's more so around the creation of the content and distribution of the content,
for sure,
not just the
activity itself. Yeah,
like there could be an archery competition or motocross competition that has like 100,000 people in the stands and doesn't get filmed and doesn't get distributed, and that person's still valuable,
right?
You know, but there's so many people out in the wild that shoot 180-inch deer that companies are not paying and are not looking for and are not looking to, you know what I'm trying to say? It's the act of promoting that gets the attention. It's, you know, obviously it helps shooting big deer and stuff, but there's no one's quote unquote like a professional at it. It's people are good at distributing content, and in the perfect storm of making a good experience with a big deer, a big elk or whatever. That's the magic triangle, is when all those things align. It's not just one of them.
It's really weird to think about how that process would have evolved. Like at what point did, and I don't know, like who would have done it first, but like who decided that that's how it should work? Like the content producer should pay to be on this platform. It seems like the manufacturers would have gone to them first and said like, hey, like you kill a lot of big deer, like exactly what you're saying. Like, would you mind promoting our stuff just even out of a bow shop? And eventually they're like, well, I need to, like, more people need to see this stuff so I can sell more of that stuff and make more money.
Well, there was nowhere to go. Like if you were a hunter, right? If you just killed big bucks, like, and whoever, Matthews or Hoyt, said, great, you know, we want to be partners with you. How are they getting seen, right? You know, that
I think in the good old days, that kind of happened. Like Michael Waddell has talked about, like, he was just a camera guy, but was a funny, good personality.
Yep.
So like Realtree kind of like pushed him up. And I think Lakoski was very similar with Matthews. Like they saw Lakoski, like, you know, like, hey, he's filming himself shooting big deer. We're going to, like, you know, help push him up. So I think that was definitely a thing back then. It's I think evolved. Everything's evolved.
Yeah. Now it's like, what do you bring to the table? Before, you could just be good at something. You could be funny. You could kill big bucks. You could be, you know, very relatable. Now it's like, okay, you could be that, but what's your platform like? And I mean, think of anybody of us that have talked to manufacturers. Like, it's one of the first things they ask. They're like, or they do research. They're like, oh, Chris B, like, how many followers does he have? I mean, that's what they do immediately, you know. And then it's like, okay, he's got a platform. Now what can he do for us? It's a numbers game is what it comes down to. And there are few companies that are still holding on to this whole TV thing like it's going to happen, but it's not there.
It's been interesting to see manufacturers like kind of scramble like over the past 10 years to just be like, well, you know, all they knew was TV. Like that's all TV and print. And it was like, here's the budget, give it to these guys that are on Sportsman or Outdoor Channel.
It's gone.
And now that's like, you know, an acknowledgement that, okay, maybe that's not the thing. So what is? It's been interesting to see companies
you would think that they're
scramble to figure out
saving
what's
money
next.
now, right? I mean, because we know some of the numbers that were being thrown out back in the TV and print days. Like now they've kind of got this budget. They don't have to commit it, you know, months and months and months in advance, really, if they don't want to. They can be opportunistic with the spend. And you can be selective with who you're doing. I think that their marketing is probably more effective than it's ever been.
Sure. I would agree.
If they're doing it right.
Yeah, I would agree.
But yeah, it's tough. There still are companies though that, you know, if you tell them that if Chris walks up to them and says, hey, I'm Chris, you know, I've got a YouTube channel. It's, you know, got 250,000 plus, they still will say, well, YouTube's free. You don't pay to be on a platform. And they're out there, and it's scary to think
less and less. I do think
it is less and less.
Companies
but
are kind of dying
off. They still exist
off.
out there, and it's scary to think that.
It's hard to deny, you know, the amount of views and awareness that like social media can bring.
It wasn't valued for a long.
I know.
Even in the transition, when the break started to happen and TV started to get pulled back, there were a lot of companies who would not acknowledge that social media or YouTube followers were of the same worth as a TV show.
Well, it definitely is a shorter form. I mean, it's a different thing. Like,
yeah, but it was purely because TV paid to be on something. They had an investment to be on somewhere.
Yeah,
and YouTube was free.
Yeah, still is.
Still is. Yeah, still is.
Yeah.
For now.
Yeah, for now, exactly.
Yeah.
Did you sign up your Threads account yet, Chris?
I did just to claim my username or whatever that is. I don't know. I was on Instagram last night and like everyone's posting about it.
What is that?
I have no idea what this is, but sure,
it's Meta's response to Twitter to basically try to stomp out Elon Musk in Twitter. It's a text-based. It's Twitter, but by Facebook and Instagram.
I'm not on Twitter either.
Yeah, well, that's what this is. Yeah,
It's funny enough. Like I can't remember. I don't know, 5-6 years ago. I literally thought Twitter was dead and gone. I thought it was like, nobody used it anymore.
It kind of was.
Yeah.
And then Elon bought it, and now everybody's all fired back up.
No, I'm talking way before that. I'm talking like Elon only bought it like a year or two.
Yeah, a year or two ago.
Yeah, this would have been like 6-7 years ago. Like if you would have asked me, I'd have been like, oh yeah, nobody uses Twitter.
I think just the Hollywood people with all their fake trolls underneath it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the problem. That's what they kind of snuffed out. But apparently they think that it's enough that, Facebook created a new app, which is mind-blowing.
That's just what we need.
Another social media app. But, yeah. But follow Chris B if you're on it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I don't know, man. The bandwidth is such a tricky thing. I mean, there's so many things. Like I wanted to spin up. I did a podcast like 2 years ago, and we did like 30 episodes, and then it's like so much other stuff got in the way, and then like, we just haven't done it again because it takes so much time. It's like, how much stuff can you do in a day?
You can't, man. I mean,
now I got to pay attention to threads.
Yeah, it's nuts. I mean, Jared and I transparently started HUNTR to kind of do what you do on your channel, which was create video content around hunting and our journey and everything else. And like 7 days into it, we're like,
that was the idea.
Yeah, we're done.
We're like, it'd be cool to film hunts, and then we're like, no, not cool.
Not cool. Can we just sit at a table and talk about it? Yeah, we could do that.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah. And we've been doing that for 2.5 years now.
So much easier.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it is, man. It's a ton of work. It sounds great, like in theory. And there's a ton of people probably listening to this that are filming hunts just for fun, and I think that's really cool. But when you've got an audience or an expectation that you have to deliver out there, it is not easy, and it will change the way you think about hunting inevitably, just because, there's a responsibility of like, man, I got to get this on film, or we need to capture this, or I got to get this post out. Like, yeah, it's a different mindset for sure.
I think it takes a special person too. Like, it's funny, Chris, and you're probably one of them. It's like, and I'm just not, like, if I'm just honest with myself, I'm like, I would struggle to like consistently come up with videos and film those. And some people are just have that, you know what I mean? Can do it consistently and find ways to make things entertaining. And I just, but, whatever it was, a couple weeks into filming our stuff, I was like, this is not for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, man, it's tricky. I mean, I think you have to love it. You got to love the process of filming and editing and everything, especially at first when it's like you're starting out. And I mean, I was talking to this group of guys. It's like, how long did it take before it was like something? And I'm like, 10 years, 10 years of pretty good dedication, and, year 7, 8, 9, 10 was like a lot of work, and it's just, you got to love it. And it's like now you build a good team around you, and that helps for sure. Yeah, it's a lot of work.
Well, that's cool to hear. I mean, not that it took that long, but I mean, for us, it's like Jeremy and I, we do love this. You know what I mean? We kind of, like I said, we started with the filming thing, and we're like, but we still really wanted to be involved. Like, we wanted to have a voice in the industry to talk about things that we're passionate about and connect with people who are, like-minded. And like, so we just kind of settled into this, and we're like, well, this makes the most sense for us. And even this morning, I told Jeremy, I was like, dude, this is my favorite thing to do every week, is to come in and it takes a lot of time, to your point, but to set aside a few hours and just talk with people who are like-minded about things that we love to talk about. And so whatever it is, not like there is an end goal with this podcast in mind, but like the path is seeming right to us. Like, it feels like this is something that we love to do, and it seems other people seem to enjoy it, which is cool. And so it'll be fun to see kind of where this thing goes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's you gotta, only so much time in the day.
It's a grind.
Yeah. There's only so much time in the day. And, and especially when it gets to be hunting season, like, inevitably, like, we want to hunt as well, and so it's like, you've got to divide that up. And I think that's probably one thing that Matt Ranella didn't get from our side, that, it's hard to explain to somebody who's not in it, is the fact, like, listen, like, we're all, in one way or another, the outdoor industry is providing income for us and for our families, right? And so, it's a tough thing to explain to somebody who only looks at the monetization of the hunting industry as a bad thing. Like, it's negative, it's not good. Whereas it's like, well, dude, like, we love this stuff and we appreciate this stuff, more than most people do. And yes, there's a monetary aspect to what we do, but at the same time, like, it's not exactly why we do it. Like, yeah, it's great. Like, we make money from it, and I'm glad this is my job. But it's also, there's still that great appreciation. Like, I don't consider myself an entertainer, right? I consider myself still a hunter, just talking about this stuff. Mm-hmm. And so that, you kind of got that feeling from Matt, where he's just like, well, no, anybody that's making money off of this is like bad, doing it for the wrong reasons. And it's like, not really, man. Like, there's plenty of people that, they'll admit it's a business, but they're doing it for the right reasons. Yeah. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely tricky. That goes into everything we talked about earlier. I mean, I think there's people that are in it for the wrong reasons, for sure. I think there are some people that probably shouldn't be in the positions that they're in, for egotistical reasons and selfish reasons. But I think there's the majority of people like you guys and so many people out there that are doing it for the good reasons, because they love it, because they want to get back to the sport, grow the sport. I think that I think it's just a tricky subject.
Yeah,
it really is.
I think there's the consumer, or the audiences in terms of content, are getting smarter, or are smart enough to understand who are the people that really love it and who the people are just doing it because it's their job, type of thing. You can just tell.
It's interesting. Yeah, because I mean, it's probably just because I actively avoid them. But I mean, if you were to ask me, I don't know if I could name anybody that I'm like, oh, that person's just clearly doing it for that. I mean, because everybody that we have a filtering process too, though. We're like, well, I want to talk to so and so because they clearly love it. Mm-hmm. So we I don't know.
Yeah, we avoid the people.
In the very nature of our process, we're probably filtering those people out, I guess.
Well, I mean, we have good conversations with, even guys like Waddell, right, who hasn't been on the podcast yet, but inevitably will at some point. But you and I have talked about it to where it's like, Michael is what you get, but Michael's very rooted in the industry. So there are talking points that I don't know, maybe if we asked him the question, would it make him uncomfortable, or, would he be able to tell us what he actually feels? I don't know. And that's with anybody, with sponsors, partners, whatever would come with that. I guess.
Well, and that's like that's not necessarily I think Michael loves to hunt. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I don't think
no doubt
there's any
mind.
question there. Yeah, you're talking more about just like the effect that sponsorship dollars have on what you can say and what you can't say.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's I think with anybody that has, sponsor dollars behind them, is like, we're pretty transparent with our partners of like, hey, we're just going to kind of say what we say anyways, like just fair warning.
And we definitely have not gotten some sponsorships because of that, because it's like,
sure.
If I get it, if I was manufacturing, I'd want you to say that. I want you to say, hey, our thing is this.
Yeah.
And we're just not willing to.
I don't do that. Yeah. Yeah, that's a tough spot to be in. Look, Chris, so are you still making your own products too? Do you have like your own line of products?
Yeah, so we have BeRealMerch.com, which is like the apparel line, I guess, of the YouTube channel.
Yeah.
So we do, hats, hoodies, your typical apparel stuff. But then, we partner with other archery brands, UltraView being the biggest. So we'll do some custom stuffs. Like we got a custom Matthews grip, and we'll resell some of those products. And then we partner with Boning to do like wraps and veins and that sort of stuff. So yeah, we do a few things here and there, just to, try to help the business out, and hardcore fans can wear the stuff and everything. So it's cool. It's all it's all about community building. You know, it's
Yeah.
like people that are on the channel, watching the channel regularly. It's like we're a community. Like it's sweet that people follow along, and if they want to be a part of that journey, you know. So it's like it's just creating an ecosystem.
Yeah, I think that right there is the number one thing that was missing from outdoor television. I mean, at any given time, I could tune into a show and I would have a beginning, middle, and an end. I didn't have to watch the show before. I didn't have to watch the show after if I didn't want to, right? It was all encapsulated in this, 22-minute episode. Whereas with the content that's coming out now, and Chris, you and Caitlin, good examples, but like even though the hunt may be encapsulated in that episode, like it's super easy for me to go back and watch the last 3 or the last 10 or whatever that came out. And you didn't have that in outdoor television. You had one episode to watch and then it was like, I got to wait till next week, or did I record something? Like it disconnected you from the content, and that disconnection, and this isn't just in hunting, right? It's why Netflix and Hulu and everything else are good. But from a hunting side, that's what the series kind of based content and this channel based content has done. I mean, we've seen it on the podcast where
it's a channel versus a show.
Yeah, somebody will watch Chris's and then they'll go back and say, oh, here's one with Cody DeCusto, or here's one with Josh Bomar, and they'll watch. That didn't exist for so many years with TV. But what it did is it gave power to these TV personalities because there were no other options.
Mm-hmm.
It was like that. There was one episode, they were in it. This product was in it. And I mean, if you didn't see it in that show, tough shit, right? Didn't show up anywhere else. So it's a huge swing in this industry. Huge.
I mean, if I can say anything for social media, it's like in that sense, it kind of gave the power back to, to the people, essentially. It's like, people like Chris B or like, Jared and Jeremy can just get on and make their own channel. And like, instead of, now people do have options. So I would say that's one benefit.
Well, and Chris, I don't know about you, but Jared and I are pretty open about it. Like, we'll watch a lot of, and I don't mean this in a bad way, anyone listen, but we watch a lot of random guys, hunting content out there. Like some dude will go hunt North Dakota or go hunt Illinois, and he's got 15 subscribers, but he had a cool video, and it's like, you never see that anywhere else. Like, wouldn't exist. He'd have no platform to even reach out there to show people that content.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think it's definitely like a power of the people situation. I mean, that's social media in general. Unless you're, buying your accounts and pumping dollars in and artificially like making yourself big.
Yeah.
If you are small grassroots, and I mean, the people kind of choose. And I think it shows where I said, it's like most people are good because like, the consumers are smarter than, companies think, and they can see through stuff, I mean, they want to see guys like having a good time and seeing like relatable stuff, and aspirational stuff and educational stuff. And that's why YouTube's cool, and there's so many threats to social media as a whole. I mean, so many back end things that, us YouTubers talk about like behind the scenes, where it's like, you got to kind of pay attention to those, like demonetization and like stuff getting banned and all that jazz. But, at the end of the day, like as long as there is a platform that'll reach people, in good light, and get new eyeballs that haven't seen hunting before, or seen archery before, maybe they're interested in it and want to learn more. As long as there's a platform out there that we can be on, I don't really care. Like it's still going. Like if my channel gets demonetized tomorrow, hopefully not, but if it does, it's like, I'm not going to go anywhere, because my mission from this is not to make money off of the channel.
Right.
It's to show what I've experienced through hunting and archery, and I'm still going to do it. I'm literally not going to change anything. And I think people get, some of these bigger channels get so tied up. It's like, oh, if I lose monetization, everything's going to change.
Yeah.
And it's like, nothing's going to change if that happens to my channel tomorrow, because my mission statement and my goals and my ethics doesn't revolve around the money coming in from that channel. That's not one of my foundational things.
Yeah.
So I think that, as long as YouTube doesn't get canceled altogether, which is the world's probably ending, or something bad's happening, if that's happening. And, things like TikTok or other threads now, like there's always going to be something So it's like, I think what's most important is you have these foundational pillars, and the consumers and the viewers see that in these channels and they gravitate towards them for a certain reason.
Yeah.
So
Chris, I think that's a good point because, there are a lot of channels that are very prominent that probably rely almost exclusively on the money coming from that channel, or in large part over it, right? And to me, man, that if that's how my family supported, I'm shitting a brick, because you are not going to control what YouTube does. No matter how big you think you are. They want to demonetize you and shut you down, they will. And if that's your money source, I think that's an issue. One thing I think would be cool for people to hear, I just looked, you're at like 245,000 subscribers. You started just like everybody else did. You basically said, hey, I'm going to start a channel and I'm going to start putting hunts on it. And, probably had no idea what the hell you were doing out of the gate. You just started doing it. Do you remember any like pivotal moments over the last, 5-10 years to where you like saw your channel grow over something that you're like, damn, like that's wild? Not necessarily just like a viral moment, but like just when you started to hit a rhythm of something.
Yeah, I think consistency is the biggest thing. As soon as you put some sort of schedule and consistency on your channel or any sort of channel, I mean, you see traction.
Yep.
So I remember it was my sophomore year in college. I actually dropped all of my classes in like September. Like the last day I could drop them without having to pay for them, sort of thing. And didn't tell my parents. And I like just went out west and went all over the place and filmed, I think it was like 15 episodes, and filmed them, edited them, like did the whole deal. And that was the first time it was like, oh wow, I'm getting like 5,000 hits a video. And it's like, oh, one did like 10,000, so it was like, that was like, wow, okay, maybe we have something here. And so then that kind of started like every fall. Then I definitely put more emphasis on filming, and then definitely filmed more like archery stuff and everything like that.
That's cool.
Early on, fortunately, we kind of hit a rhythm early. We would make these funny videos with a group of archery friends, and they kind of took off. Like I posted just a few of them, and like one or two of them took off and got a lot of views. So that definitely put a base on my channel. Like we probably got 1,000 to 5,000 subscribers pretty fast. And then, it had something to kind of grow off of. But I think consistency is the biggest thing. I mean, you can Google it and YouTube it. I mean, it's no different than any other YouTube channel. You have consistency to build the community and viral stuff to pull in new eyeballs.
Yeah.
I mean, it's no different. So it's just putting in the time and the effort, and nothing's overnight. And the first 1,000 is the hardest, and the next 10,000 is the next hardest. And then 100,000 is the next hardest. And then after 100,000, it's been just kind of coasting, just very linear.
Yeah.
So been very fortunate, very blessed that we've been able to keep it rocking.
That's cool, man. I mean, it's I'm sure there's a lot of people, probably young people listening to this that are like, yeah, I'd love to start it. I just don't know. And we always say, you got to jump in. Just do it, man. Just jump in there and start doing something. You sitting around not doing anything isn't going to get you anywhere quick. So, but that's cool to see how it is.
And I think it.
Good.
Well, I was gonna say the biggest thing is like you have to go into it with intentions of just loving it and loving the process and wanting to like film your hunts and just hunting in general. Like you can't love the fact of like doing it as your job, or you probably will never get there.
Sure.
If you go in, it's no different than shooting a bow. I mean, shooting competitions and archery is so mental. Like if you step up to the line and you're like, I am going to shoot a 10 right now. I'm going to shoot a 10. I'm going to hope for a 10. Your chances of actually shooting that 10 have lessened because you haven't worried about the process. If you worry about the process to get to the 10, then you'll get to the 10. Or if you step up to the line and be like, I'm going to shoot a 300, which is a perfect score. Like on the first arrow, all you're going to do is think about the angle. So it's no different than that. I mean, you got to think about the process and love the process. Yeah. So it's no different than anything in life. You just got to really love the process.
Mm. So what do your parents think now that after that?
I mean, I still don't think they fully understand everything that's going on. It's, it's like, yeah, I make money off of YouTube and this made up stuff, but they were definitely skeptical at first. I mean, I was like, going to college and I like dropped out that semester. And then I like moved back in with my parents and I was like shipping all of my merch out of like the spare bedroom of their house and like filming in the backyard and like running all over the place.
They're like, what are we going to do
like
about
learning?
Chris?
Like I was just, like a little worried,
Yeah.
And I was just learning, man. I mean, it was all about like staying up till 1, 2 a.m. learning about like, Facebook marketing. And it's just like, it's so wild that you do have to put in a lot of work to understand everything. And I was just lucky and fortunate and blessed that I had like that drive earlier on, like in my high school and college career to kind of like figure that out, that like straight out, like I've never had a real job. Like I've always worked for myself or like partnered with companies, of course, but I've never had a real job because we've just took, I didn't even graduate from college. I dropped out of college because it was ramping up enough where I was like, okay, we're just gonna rip at this.
Yeah.
So
that's funny, man.
It's been a wild deal.
Your dad's like, don't you lie to me. You got one of those OnlyFans accounts, don't you?
Are you showing your butthole on the internet?
Shit. Oh, that's funny, man.
Only if.
Yeah. Well, listen, dude, we appreciate you coming on this afternoon and sharing some time with us. And it is funny, dude. I feel like how many times we see something on Kansas, we're like, God damn, Crispy freaking ruining it for everyone. But it's undeniably like one of the best videos, hunting videos that's probably ever been out on YouTube. I mean, very few that I think can rival that kind of weird feeling. And, the fact of how it all played out, it just tells anybody that can happen at any time. Sometimes you just run into it in the right place, right time.
Yeah. And the channel continues to be entertaining. I know Jeremy and I, tune in from time to time. And so we enjoy all the stuff you're putting out.
Except for the Matthews stuff.
Yeah.
That's all of it, Jeremy.
Yeah. Well, thanks guys. I really appreciate that. I mean, the super kind words. And I mean, that's what sometimes you get in these highs and lows of channel and creativity and everything. And it's like, when you hear stuff like that, it like keeps the fire going for sure.
Yeah.
But the Kansas, I mean, it proves and shines light on the feeling that all of us get when you sit in a tree knowing that you have a potential to shoot a big deer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's what that hunt was. It was like, I'm in Kansas. I could shoot a giant deer right now tonight.
Yep.
And then it happened, but it doesn't always happen. But that feeling is always there.
Yeah.
And that's what's awesome about
You
that.
could tell, man, in that video, it encapsulates the feeling we all have of like,
it could
what
happen.
if? Like,
it's Kansas.
Yeah,
it could happen.
I'm in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Like it very well could happen, And for a lot of people, it doesn't work out that way. But when it does, that feeling is something that's hard to describe. Well, cool, dude.
100%.
Well, we appreciate it, and we'll definitely have to catch up with you here soon.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.
All right, man. See ya.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Oh, Chris B. Blaming him for Kansas one year at a time.
I do like his analysis of that video of like it embodies that mindset of like, I'm in Kansas, it's the rut, anything could happen. And it very rarely does. 99% of the time, it's like,
It's planned.
you go home.
It's not staged.
No. I was going to say 99% of the time, it's like you go home empty-handed or whatever.
You think that, but it doesn't.
But in that 1% of the time, what happened to Chris B could happen to you. And that's what made that video go viral.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, in that same breath, a powerful statement is like, it for sure did have an effect on applications. Yeah, COVID did as well.
No doubt.
No doubt. That was a big piece. But
well, that's kind of the question we circled last week. I told Chris on the podcast, I don't think he did anything wrong. Like, it's not inherent.
No.
I don't, what are you supposed to do? Not post it? No, like that's.
Yeah, to me, it's no different than people saying, well, whoever, X land agent, whitetail properties, whatever, is increasing the value of land. It's like, well, no, the market, the demand, the people are.
Right. In the sense that people are going to find out anyways.
They're going to find out anyways. And so, I mean, it's just, it's a great piece of content. It's like, whatever, a moth to the flame type of thing. Like you're just drawn in because it's a great piece of content. And inevitably, it immediately says, well, hey, you could do this.
Yeah. If
you wanted to. You could come out here, you could apply for a tag, you could sit in a tree, and you could see a giant.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it'll wear off here at some point because people will start to have the experiences of like, either that's not what it is, it costs too much, they just see a ton of people. Like the nuance of it will wear off, and something new will come along, like Ohio will do it or whatever. Illinois will do it, and people will be drawn in. But yeah, it's weird.
I think people will start to, I don't know if it's like a self-censorship, but maybe in a sense, it's like, I think people realize, like even Chris will think twice. He's like, I don't know, like, it's cool that I posted that, and like a lot of people really enjoyed it, but also he's like, I went back the next year and it really sucked. Like indirect,
but yeah.
But yeah, I think people across the board will start to like just consider the way they talk about spots.
Well, so I think this ties back into what I said about the TV and his series. Like, had you watched a single episode of Chris killing that giant, you'd be like, wow, that area of Kansas is banging. There are giants there. But because of the way his channel goes out, watch what happened a year later. It was not a good experience. Mm-hmm. And so that continued journey.
Yeah, and that's deer hunting in general. I mean, yes, there are certain states, certain regions that time after time, historically have big deer. But it definitely is cyclical. Like even, spots dry up and other spots turn on and like
EHD, pressure, whatever. Things happen.
Just even seasonal, like crop rotations and little minor things. It's like you really
Timber harvest.
Yeah, if you're going to consistently be having the best experience, or be on deer basically, you have to be evolving and always monitoring, and there probably is big picture patterns that happen, like everyone
sure
know, like okay, this area is turning back on, and maybe you start to critique as to why that might be. But
yeah, it's an interesting thing on it. But Chris has obviously done a really good job. I was glad he kind of answered that YouTube thing, because I think a lot of people, including us, are like, well, here we are at this, and like, what do we need to do different? It's just time. You hear that kind of through a lot of these guys who have successful
10
channels.
Years to build what he has now.
Bomar's the same way. It just takes time to build these things up, and consistency of content. And so
these things, I think, being communities, like that's Chris hit it on the head. He's like, just building a pool of people who are like, into the way that you're thinking or talking about things, or like the way that you put content together. Like it is cool. Like I think that's one thing that, as many downsides as there are, is that social media has allowed, is like there's these kind of like networks of people who are like, well, I really enjoy, the hunting public. I can relate to that. This is my thing. And there's obviously a giant community for that. And Chris Bees is similar to that. And I like to think, people listening to our podcast is like, yeah, I like the way Jared and Jeremy think about things. It's like they ask a lot of dumb questions and like they're idiots on something.
Yeah, fuck them.
But
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think it is a good point. I do think that those platforms and things like Chris and Josh Bomar and these other guys they're only going to get stronger. There's no doubt in my mind. These channels aren't, because of algorithms and the number of people, right, the supply into them. Channels aren't growing like they used to. We talk about it all the time. It's like, hey, if you open a Facebook page, man, it used to be you could grow that Facebook page fast. Now it's like a pay-to-play game. It's slow rolling because it's saturated. So, that's where we're at right now. And so these guys who have positioned themselves for a long time, and people who are new who stick with it for a long time, those will be the ones that succeed. Right? And then there's this other layer underneath that's like come and go, inconsistent posting, whatever it is. And so, yeah, it is absolutely more difficult, I think, in today's social media or YouTube era to grow your channel or your page. But I think when you do grow it to that level, it is worth way more because it's so hard to get there.
Yeah.
And so I do think that those hold a lot of weight. And, I think that's why you see these kind of repeat visitors coming back for
that's
like
because
Chris.
There's so many options. Think about how many videos get uploaded. Thousands of hours probably a day get uploaded to YouTube.
Millions.
And so if you can grow a channel like today, it's like you're competing against that, for people's attention, basically. Yep. And not that we view this as a competition or any of these guys do, but like it just speaks to the fact that like you could watch anything you want. Like there's literally a limited, and so it's it's kind of a capitalist type of where only the best, the most identifiable communities like kind of rise to the top there, and it just takes time.
Yeah, only so much content in the day you can consume as an individual, and there's a lot of options to do it. So yeah, pretty cool and cool to get Chris's take on that, and really on his bow, his archery kind of evolution there, because that's something that I think you and I had talked about even on Chris's background. It's like, well, is he shooting pro now? Has he kind of let off of that?
Well, and you could see like the weakness on our end, like totally foreign to us. Like as much as we love to bow hunt, it's like, dude, I'm not like, I don't work on my own bow that much. Like I make my own arrows. You know, but like you start talking about the different governing bodies of the archery industry and like how those competitions are held, like I don't know anything about it.
Well, we talked about it before. Guys are like, I think we were talking about our fixed versus expandables, and one of those things is around tuning the bow, and it's like, okay, I know how to do some stuff, and they're like, they start talking about shimming cams and things like that, and it's like, whoa.
You're like, whoa.
Shimming who?
I don't even know her.
But so and that's just because I grew up a bow hunter. I just grew up with a bow to kill a deer.
Yeah.
Like obviously accuracy matters in that, but it wasn't like I was out there shooting competitions. Like I was trying to kill a deer.
It's like anything, people just cling to different aspects of like you and I seem to have we really are passionate about the land.
Sure.
And I think
and it all sets up. I mean, I want to be, when that one shot a year or whatever happens, like I want to be freaking on point for it.
100%. There's just you have to be at a certain level with everything to be successful, a general level of competency or understanding, but there's different niches within any activity or whatever that people are like really hone in on.
It's very cool, man. It's there's a lot of different facets out there around bow hunting and archery, and I think it's why a lot of people are super passionate about it, because it takes a very deep dedication to both of that, and some mix of it together in order to be successful at it. I think, not to point, that's why we come down sometimes on the crossbow side of things, is just because we know how much goes into the preparation from a vertical bow to be accurate, to capitalize on that one shot. And we take a lot of pride when we can make that shot. Like that's a archery skill that we are like super, super proud of. And it's not there on the other side.
Yeah. It is funny to hear, not that I was trapping him with the question at all, but to hear Chris talk about like the tack shows and whatever.
Yeah.
It's like just think about it.
Yeah, you're
why
right.
is that? And he's like, yeah, I don't know. It would be like frowned upon. I was like, why? It's like, well, because it's not really archery. And it's like, interesting.
Interesting. That's an interesting take. Do we agree?
Interesting.
Yes. Cool. Well, that'll do it for this episode of HUNTR Podcast with Chris B. 137, I believe, is what I said. We'll go with that. And we'll catch you next week.
Later.
Take me